Welcome. Today we're going to be taking a look at Pipeline. This is a 2 to 4 player tile placement route building economic game where you take the role of startup oil companies trying to capitalize on the privatizing of the oil industry. You will be building networks in your refinery, gaining upgrades, and buying and selling oil barrels, trying to become the most successful oil company. How do you become the most successful oil company and win the game? By having the most money at the end of the third year. Now that we know what the winning condition is, let's take a look at the components setup and how gameplay works in Pipeline. Now let's take a look at the components. You have your main game board, player boards, and in each of the player colors you have your worker and disc. Pipe tiles, tank tiles, machine tiles, market overlay tiles, valuation tile, valuation cards, upgrade cards, order tiles, contract tiles, action tiles, upgrade tiles, refinement cost tiles, round marker, oil barrels, penalty marker, oil refinement markers, money tiles, and then finally, your rule book. Now let's take a look at the setup. We're going to be setting this up for a 2-player game, which takes 20 steps, 15 general steps, and 5 individual steps. Step 1, place the main board in the center of the table and the round marker on the leftmost space in year 1. Step 2, get the player components. Players are going to choose a color and then get the player board, worker, and disc of that color. Step 3, fill the crude market and crude row of the refined markets with the matching oil barrels. You will also place and use the market overlays when you're playing with less than 4 players. Step 4, you are going to separate, shuffle, and place your contracts. You are going to separate the contracts by the type on the back of the tile between low, mid, and high grade. You will shuffle each stack and then draw a number of contracts based on the number of players. If you are playing a 2 to 3 player game, you will get 4 contracts, and a 4-player game would get 5 contracts each. Then you will place them in the corresponding row next to the board and fill in the contract display. When you have less than 4 players, you will not use the rightmost column. Step 5, separate, shuffle, and place order tiles. You're going to separate the order tiles by the number of oil barrels needed, then shuffle each stack. Then you will fill the order display with the corresponding number of orders per type. When you're playing with less than 4 players, you will not use the rightmost column. You would then return the remaining orders back to the box. Step 6, select and place upgrade cards and tiles. You are randomly going to select 5 upgrade types to use. If it's your first game, there is a suggestion in the rulebook. And then you will place the cards in rows for levels 1, 2, and 3 next to the board. The upgrade tiles are placed face up next to the level 1 of each row. Step 7, place machines and tanks. You will fill the machine and tank shops with tiles and stack the remaining next to the board. Step 8, shuffle and stack your pipe tiles in 4 equal stacks face down. Step 9, fill the 4 government quadrants with 1 tile per square. Step 10, next to the machine and tank shops, reveal and place 2 pipe tiles per player, creating the available markets. Step 11, shuffle and place the action tiles. You will shuffle the 4 action tiles and place 1 on each of the 4 action spaces in the center of the main game board. Step 12, shuffle and place refinement markers. You will shuffle the refinement markers and place them on the refinement cost spaces in the top left corner of the main game board. For your first few times playing the game, it is suggested to remove the number 7 tiles. Step 13, shuffle and place 3 valuation cards next to the board. For your first game, there is a suggestion in the rulebook as to which cards to use. Next to the cards, you will place the valuation tile. Step 14, randomly choose a start player and then place the discs on the turn order track in clockwise order. Step 15, create supply pools. You will create supply pools for penalty cubes, money tokens, and oil barrels. Now let's look at the individual steps. Step 1, collect and place 5 tank tiles. Keep in mind that you cannot move them once you place them. These allow you to hold that row's level of oil barrels. Step 2, collect your pipeline trackers and place them at 0 on your player board. These are used to record the longest pipeline of each of the oil types. Step 3, take $40 from the supply. Step 4, place your worker next to your player board. And then finally, step 5, leave space for personal pipe networks, contracts, orders, and upgrades. Now let's take a look at the gameplay. A game consists of rounds spread across 3 years. There are 8 rounds in year 1, 6 rounds in year 2, and 4 rounds in year 3. After the final round in year number 3, we will go into the final scoring. In each round, in turn order, players will take turns. After each round, you'll move the round marker to the next space. A turn consists of 2 phases, the work phase and the machine phase. During the work phase, you will perform up to 3 steps: the main action, secondary action, and then adjusting the turn order. During the main action, you will place your worker on one of 10 action locations. The secondary action, which is optional, if you are in any of the cross actions in the center of the main game board, you can pay $10 to use the adjacent action. And then step 3, adjusting the turn order. If the action space has the turn order symbol, then you may adjust your turn order spot for the next round. When adjusting turn order, you may move and slide down other players in that location. Now let's look at the actions. There are 10 action locations. Refined Markets 1, 2, and 3, Crude Market, Contracts and Loans, Tanks and Pipes, Machines and Pipes, Upgrades, Government Pipes, and your personal pipes. Now let's look at each of these action locations in detail. Refined Markets 1, 2, and 3. This is where you can buy and sell crude, low, mid, and high-grade oil barrels. You must watch the number of the market that you select with your worker because prices and types are different for each market. When choosing the refined market locations, you must sell any oil barrels before you buy. All of the prices for selling and buying are above those spots. It's good to keep in mind that you can always sell at lower grade. It's also good to keep in mind with the refined market, if someone has sold oil barrels in a particular market, you could go to that market and buy those oil barrels for the price listed above the spot. The next location is the crude market. This is where you will purchase and or sell the 3 types of crude oil. These work just like the refined markets, where you will sell before you buy your oil barrels, and you can always sell down to the crude level. The next location is Contracts and Loans. At this location, players can take up to 3 contracts and or 1 loan. When taking contracts, you can take up to 1 contract from each row. Then you would decide if you want to activate the contract or defer the contract to the next year. So once you select a contract, if you want to defer it to the next year, you place it at the top of your player board. And if you want to make it active, you would place it to the right of your player board. Deferred contracts will activate at the start of the next year. Active contracts must be fulfilled in the current year and every year after, or you will suffer a penalty. When suffering the penalty, you would lose the contract permanently and you would gain a penalty cube. Penalty cubes are the red cubes that cost you money at the end of the game. If you choose to take a loan at this action location, you would take $15 from the supply and a penalty cube. Then you can decide your turn order for the next round. The next action location are the tanks and pipes. This is where players will be able to take tanks and or pipe tiles. You would purchase any amount of tank tiles, paying the price per tile. These locations will not refresh until the refresh phase between years. It's good to keep in mind that tanks will allow you to hold more oil barrels. Then players may purchase pipes next to the tank and pipe shop, where they can purchase 2 tiles for $15 or 4 tiles for $40. And then the players can decide their turn order spot for the next round. The next action location are the machines and pipes. This is where players may take machines and or pipe tiles. When purchasing the machine tiles, you would pay the cost next to the tile. Keep in mind that these tiles will not refresh until the refresh phase between years. Machines allow you to run pipes for $15 during the machine phase. Then players may purchase pipe tiles. Then you can decide your turn order spot for the next round. The next action location is upgrades. Players may purchase up to 2 upgrades for $20 each. After you purchase your upgrade or upgrades, you flip the upgrade tile face down for each of the upgrades you purchased, and you may also flip an additional upgrade tile face down. This means that no other players can choose that row's upgrades for the rest of the year. When purchasing upgrades, you have to start with the first level and then go to the second and third. And then you would decide your turn order spot for the next round. There's a list of all the upgrade card benefits in the rulebook. The next action location is the government pipe tiles. You will place your worker on an open quadrant of government pipe tiles. During the first year, only 2 of the 4 quadrants on the main game board can be open. During the second year, 3, and the third year, 4. Once someone purchases a tile from a quadrant, that quadrant is considered open. Then you must purchase the tile your worker is on, and then you have the option of purchasing any of the tiles it touches, excluding the diagonals. The price list, based on the number of tiles you want to purchase, is located on the main game board. So 1 tile for 5, 2 for 10, 3 for 20, 4 for 35, and then 5 for 55. And then the last action location is your personal pipe network. You would place your worker on a pipe tile in your pipe network or refinery. The 3 pipes located on that pipe tile will run and refine oil barrels based on the length and the refinement cost. So if one of your pipes in your personal network was orange and had a length of 4, you could upgrade from crude to low. It's good to keep in mind that you cannot run pipes connected to a machine. A length for your network is the number of segments between 2 joints. And also keep in mind that you have to have an open spot for the final grade of that oil barrel. So if we upgraded from crude to mid-grade, we would not have to have a spot at low grade, but we would have to have an open spot at mid grade. When you are adding pipe tiles to your personal network or refinery, you must connect the tile to at least one other pipe tile in your network. Also, when adding pipe tiles, it's good to use your trackers to let you know how long your longest pipe network or refinery is for each particular oil color. Once you've performed your main action, optionally chose to perform a secondary action, and adjusted the turn order, if applicable, you would move on to the second phase of your turn, the machine phase. This is where players may pay $15 to run any or all of their machines in their personal pipe network or refinery. All of the pipes connected to the machine would run, and any pipes that are connected to 2 machines in your refinery or network only run 1 time. When fulfilling contracts, make sure that you place oil barrels on the contract and get money based on the grade. You are only allowed to fulfill contracts once per year, and they must be active contracts to fulfill the contract. When fulfilling orders, you fulfill an order all at once. You take an order and get money for all of the oil barrels filling the order. You may fill multiple orders per turn. After you finished the machine phase, it would go on to the next player's turn, and then once turns are finished, you would move to the next round. And then rounds would continue until you finish the first year, and then before starting the second year, you would have a refresh phase. During the refresh phase, you will refresh 4 things. Contracts. You will discard the rightmost column of contracts, slide over the left column of contracts, and refill the left column. Players with incomplete contracts will then get a penalty cube, and it is at this time you will remove oil barrels from any contracts. And then finally, any deferred contracts will now slide to the right of the player board and become active. The second refresh is for crude and refined markets. You will resupply the markets based on the supply icon and remove from the refined markets based on the demand icon. Also keep in mind the arrows let you know the direction to fill in. So for the crude market, we would start with the right and fill in to the left. Next is refreshing the tanks and machines. You will discard and refill all pipe tiles next to the machine and tank shop based on the number of players. And then you will refill any open spaces in the tank or machine shop. And then finally, upgrades. You will flip any of the face down upgrade markers back to face up. And then turns and years will continue until the end of the final turn in year 3. Then we would go into the final scoring. Final scoring takes 6 steps. Step 1, contracts. You will assess the contracts. Any player with incomplete contracts will gain 1 penalty cube per contract that is incomplete. Step 2, oil barrels. Players will earn money for any oil barrels still left on their player board. The money that they will receive per barrel is listed on the player board. Step 3, pipelines. Players will earn money for each of their pipelines in their network. The money you earn is located on your player board. So for each pipe network in your refinery that goes from crude to high grade, you would would get $30. For each one that goes from crude to mid-grade, you get 20, and then from crude to low, you would get 10. Step 4, valuations. Players will earn money from the valuation tile and the 3 valuation cards. A description of each one of these valuation cards is in the rulebook. Step 5, penalties. Players will lose money for the amount of penalty cubes they have on their player board. The amount a player would lose is located on their player board. And then step 6, cash. Players will add all of the money in their hand. The player with the most money has the most successful oil company and wins Pipeline.